welcome everyone this morning to our very first together education program, Powered to Grow. My name is Russell Silty. I'm the general manager at Hacienda Golf Club. We have 10 individuals today. We have 3 of our association presidents, Golf Course Superintendents Association, our Club Managers Association, and our PGA Southern California Association. I think this program was conceived a couple of years ago. The Education Committee, led by Mr. Kulo and Mr. Lohman at that time, just a neat idea, and the topics, breaking down the silos is so relevant to us, and also the certification aspect. And then lastly, we get to spend time with an icon in our industry. And as I studied more and more about him, I'm just more impressed with Mr. King. So we have a wonderful day ahead of us. I'd like to start by introducing our 3 association presidents who joined us. They'll each spend a few minutes giving us an update on their association and how we've weathered through the pandemic. And it will be nice to forget the word pandemic, by the way. How we've weathered through it, and what tomorrow looks like for their association, and what we have to look forward to, and perhaps some challenges that we see. Those joining us are Robin Shelton, PGA and CCM. He's the general manager of the Newport Beach Country Club. We have Kurt Burmeister. He's a CCM CCE, which, by the way, that stands for Certified Club Manager and Certified Club Executive. He's the general manager and COO at the club at Pasadena. And then we have Curtis Wolford. He's the president of the Golf Course Superintendents Association. He's from Woodbridge Golf and Country Club. And 3 wonderful leaders. And why don't we start with you, Kurt? Give us some background in yesterday and tomorrow for us, the CCM.
All right, yeah, Russell, you hit it on the head. It's going to be so nice when we don't have to talk about the pandemic, but as we kind of come out of it here, I would say our chapter, the Golden State chapter represents all of California. We've kind of gotten to the point where I think we've come closer together as a chapter, which is kind of funny to say, but going online, we normally have all these LANs, these local area networks. So we're broken up to 6 to 8 groups, and having all the online availability, it's brought everyone to one place, if you will. So we're really looking forward to opening back up and getting those LANs going and breaking things back into those sections. But we'll never lose that piece of doing some online, doing a hybrid to bring everybody together the best we can. So we've seen our membership increase over this time. We've seen a lot more, food and beverage managers come online, a lot more, golf professionals come online, not so many superintendents. So we got to work on the superintendents a bit, but, it's just become more diverse, I think. So that's very good for our organization. And we've been able to target more of our education. So we have some, kind of the higher level education, and then the new manager education. So that's been something we've talked about for years, and we've really been able to execute on it in the last 18 months or so. So, we don't celebrate the pandemic, but it certainly hasn't been a bad thing for us, I don't think. And now as we come back online, we have, a lot of conferences that are coming up. Our golf tournaments are all back this year. We're going to have 4 of those coming back. Our fall conference is going to be down Southern California in October, so we're excited about that. And then we just have, San Diego is the national conference for CMAA this year, so it's all coming to the West, and we'll be able to celebrate with the whole organization, come March of next year. So that's kind of us in a nutshell right now, and we're excited about where we're going. So.
It's interesting, Kurt. We learn a lot about people when we're in a crisis mode, and you've been a great president, and Crystal has just been a great leader as well. I've attended so much education that I just would have never happened without this past year. thank you so much. You've been a great, steady leader.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Russell. And to talk about Crystal a little bit as well, she's just phenomenal in her role. So thank you for putting this together. I think the more all three of our organizations work together to better the club environment, I think we all benefit from that. So thank you for your part in putting this together.
Yes, and before I go on, really, Tom Addis and Nikki Gatch, they, through their network, really, again, pulled together 10 wonderful people. So, to our SCPGA section leaders, thank you so much.
Sure.
Curtis, it's nice to have you join us. I know that, you're well-traveled, and I haven't spent much time with you, but I'm excited to get to know you more. And why don't you take us on a little journey, sir?
Okay, well, as you know, that on the superintendent side of the house, through the pandemic, we've been very busy. We're always getting a lot of things thrown out our way. Kind of coming up, San Diego 2022, we have the golf industry show coming. Everyone's preparing for a full in-person live show. That will be, I think, well attended, because I think people are ready to get out and get some in-person education soon. This year we've got the GCSA Golf Championship coming up in October. It's going to be down in Palm Desert. So the association's excited about that. We're starting back up on some First Green field trips, sponsored through the First Green, which are, STEM-based education for, grade school to high school groups. So we're trying to reach out and start a lot of those types of programs back up. As you know, with kind of the water situation in California, this year's looking kind of grim. The state association is trying to get in front of a lot of water purveyors, because we know the drought restrictions are coming. We have 2 counties in California, Santa Clara and Marin County, that already have mandatory restrictions. So we're trying to work with these counties and address what we can do for some of these golf courses as far as water restrictions. Just today, I got a notice from the State Water Resource Control Board. They are now sending notices out that some post-1914 water right holders are going to be limited on the amount of water that are going to be available. So the state's going to be a little pickle with water coming up this year. The superintendents associations are trying to be on top of what's coming and what's being released before they're kind of made public. Through that is we worked really hard to generate relationships with a lot of these purveyors of water that, they're thinking of us now, which in the past they really haven't. That kind of leads me into where we are going as a state. Back in 2019, the state released the Best Management Practices Guide. We worked pretty darn hard on that. And that is a document to show that all these regulatory agencies, that the golf industry is up in front and doing things correctly environmentally and implementing these best management practices. Through the state association, we're having a little problem with getting adoption. We have a low adoption rate so far. I mean, it's only about 7% of all the courses in California. So as facility managers, any of your facilities, if I implore you to get your superintendents to do this little document, BMP document, it could be done in as little as 15 minutes. It could be fully customizable for your specific golf course, because we all know how different all of California is climatically. Super easy to do. There's lots of help available. I am available. There's people through the GCSAA that are available to help you craft this document. But the reason for the importance of it is the more adoption we get, the more credibility it gives us with these regulatory agencies. I can't stress about it more than enough. You know, within it, it has all the tools you need to help address creating a drought plan, how to address certain circumstances that come your way. It really lays out some good ways to attack some of these problems that we're going to be facing. So the more of the adoption we get for that, the better it's going to look for us as a group.
Since 2019, 7% adoption rate is too low. This is a document that's available at the GCSAA site, and is this a state of California document?
It's a state specific document for California.
So we could communicate with our superintendents. They can
Please.
go onto the website. We can pull this forward. It probably becomes a nice optic piece. It's a nice PR piece as well within each of our clubs.
Absolutely. You know, we've put it in front of the Department of Pesticide Resources. We've got approval from them. We've got a lot of approval from a lot of different state regulatory agencies that have given the thumbs up on it. So it's ready to go. But you know, it really serves as a guide and a tool for facility managers, not just superintendents, but also for general managers and course managers as well. I mean, it's great education.
It's one of the topics today is breaking down the silos. This is a document that the entire facility needs to adopt.
Absolutely.
It's an education opportunity. You know, it is dire when you start reading about the Colorado River level and the Lake Mead level, and the fact that we may not even have enough water running through the dam above Vegas to create power. It's very scary. Curtis, I'm so glad you brought that up. What a great introduction to yesterday and tomorrow. I have so many more questions asked about best practices and things through a pandemic, but we'll circle back with you. Pleasure, sir. Mr. Robin Shelton, it's a pleasure to have you with us, sir, our Southern Cal PGA president and general manager at Newport Beach Country Club. Robin, you're a great leader within our industry, and it's a pleasure to be with you, sir.
Well, hey, thanks for putting this together. Thanks for allowing me to be here. It's so cool to see some of our national names. I know you said hello to Mr. Pasternak before we got on, so it's cool that we are able to be virtual here and get so many great influencers from across our country. As far as the golf industry goes, I don't think it's any secret that we are booming. We are busier and busier than ever. You know, even with COVID last year, I mean, we are still looking at a double-digit growth in 2021 over 2020. So I think that speaks some volumes as far as how busy, our clubs and our facilities will be. And I think a lot of the question becomes, hey, how do we sustain that momentum? How do we keep it going? I mean, we can't keep doing the things we've always done, expect a different result, but how do we keep that momentum going in the months and years ahead? And, besides golf being busy, right, I think all of the national economic indicators indicate that, hey, people are going to be at our clubs and playing golf more. The Federal Reserve said, hey, interest rates aren't going to be increased this year. Inflation is up. And I think we also have to look at, the amount of people that are going to be working from home. This trend is not going away. Depending on what source you use, wherever you look at, we're going to be at least 30% of people are going to be working from home. Whereas prior to the pandemic, again, depending on where you look at it, was between 5 and 8%. So we have to be very mindful of, hey, how do we keep the momentum going and how do we remain relevant in people's lives? And I think, we can look at, hey, what other industries, are doing. But I think, when you look at what we've learned in the past year or so, family programs are so important. The hang at the club is so important. Hospitality, I think we have to get to know our members and our guests better. The cultural piece of the club, I think it's important to know who you are and what makes you different and unique. And, while Polo Golf, they make a shirt and Travis Matthew makes a shirt, their culture and their identity are two totally different things. So how do we do that in our clubs, in our golf courses, and make people want to hang longer and have the vibe just be a little better and more relevant. I think as far as what our section is doing to try to keep us relevant and keep learning we're kind of doubling down on the education. And hey, you can never be over-educated and over-prepared. Our Catalyst webinars that we've been doing, led by John Kula, have been off the charts good. We've been doing our California, Nevada chats to keep everybody educated on all things COVID. Our Launchpad program continues to do very special things for our associates. We've added in our Gibbs webinars that Seiko Matsumura is leading. From a career standpoint is super, super cool. But we keep banging and we keep going off the charts good. Our foundation, is raising money. We had our fall classic, or we'll have our fall classic. Our 4 youth pro-am raised about $80,000 for the SCPGA Foundation, for the Haley Moore Foundation. We've given out $32,000 in scholarships, and our Clubs for Youth program is giving away 18 sets this year. I think, hey, we just have to be very mindful of, hey, how do we keep the momentum going? And we have to lead, and we have to learn. Doing things like this are great ways to learn it and be more relevant. But let's keep learning from other industries and getting to know our customers and knowing who our clubs and who our brands are. That I think will help continue to sustain this momentum that we're on.
Oh, interesting, Robin. This is it's very enjoyable to listen to. As I think about all three associations, we represent about 52,000 members in America. I don't have that down within the state of California, but we should be so proud, you three presidents, of the ownership and the opportunity that you've seen and have taken during this time. It's, as I listen to you speak, Robin, it's almost like we're resetting our business, very much like opening a new facility where the customers are knocking at the door. We're at full capacity, but quite frankly, we're limited in staff. And it's funny, as I sit here and listen, I think about our club manager, our GM, and I think about our golf leader, and I think about our golf course superintendent. We're really missing that food and beverage leader. And I think about the GMs on the call. The amount of work that we've been doing has really shifted into that food and beverage side because it's been so difficult to shore it up. I think there's some great stories there as well.
Well, I think you make a very good point that this is the time to kind of rebrand and restart and make it whatever we want to. So that's a very good point you make there, and I think a good takeaway for a lot of people, hopefully.
Hasn't it been interesting? I always felt that within our industry, perhaps our member or our customer may be a little bit different than outside of our sanctuaries, right?
100%.
But they're not. It's been just fascinating to go through the emotions as a membership body, hasn't it? But what we've had is we've had each other to rely on, all three associations, and I'm blessed and happy that I can be part of two. But after listening to Curtis, there's some critical initiatives there that make me want to get more involved in his association as well. It's quite frightening, really. Robin, Curtis, anything you'd like to add before we move on to the next session?
I don't, I just want to reiterate, you hit on the head, Russell. I mean, bringing the three together, listening to Curtis talk about that organization. I mean, the the pros always bring a whole nother element from the fun side. And another great point, that food and beverage piece, while it's such a major piece of the business, it's really underrepresented as a whole, you know, as organized, I guess is the best way to put it. So great to bring it together. That's all I can say.
It really is. And I think we need to talk about that as we move forward in the future. That element is critical. And again, I think as GMs, it was fascinating to me how many times I pulled out my notepad in my back pocket and I had my board notes, some bullet points to remember to put on the agenda, and I'd flip that over and be taking a member's order at the same time while busting the table on the way to the kitchen. Fascinating time, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. Gentlemen, thank you for your contributions to the California membership. Have a nice morning. Please stay with us if you're available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on into our next section, which is breaking down silos at the facility. I find it to be a fascinating topic and one that I'm very passionate about. There's so many ways to talk about this. I can't think of three more qualified individuals. Two of the individuals, Leslie Ludlow, the general manager at the golf club at Snoqualmie Ridge, located in the greater Seattle, Washington area, and Scott Hine, the general manager at the Farms Golf Club located in Rancho Santa Fe, the PGA member, Leslie, a CMAA member, are dear friends in the industry. We spent a lot of time together, but Dan Pasternak is brand new to me. And as I'm going through this process with Dan and I'm reading his material that he's sending forward, this is a special leader. And Dan, it's a pleasure to have you, a PGA member and the general manager at Essex Fells Country Club, located in Essex Fells, New Jersey. Welcome to all three of you. I want to start off with a definition, and then I'll ask for a response. The definition of a silo is a system, process, or department that operates in isolation from others. As experts in this area, why do you think silos exist? And then the second question is, do you think they're more common than not in our hospitality industry? It's a very interesting question. Dan, I'm so curious to hear from you on that question. Please take over, sir. Dan,
Mr. Pasternak, you're still on mute.
You have me?
Yeah, now we can hear you, Dan. Did you hear the question okay?
Okay. I did. So thank you for inviting me to do this. You know, when Tom Mattis asks me to do anything, I'd walk his dog if he called me to do it. So I'm pleased to be with you all. Why do they exist? It's probably the worst excuse for anything is that the whole process of, I work at a private club, it's almost set up that way. I think the governance structure of, this committee-led where the senior managers report direct to the committee chairs is an outdated mode of doing things. And if we can't get everybody working toward a unified plan, if we can't get all the senior managers working as a team and collaborating with one another because they're answering to some other individual, I think those types of governance structures just perpetuate themselves.
Dan, that's a wonderful answer. Just a couple of follow-up questions. When you arrived at your club, it was broken down into silos, wasn't it?
Very much so. I was really the first general manager at this club who was hired to function as a COO. Prior to that, all of the department heads were at the same level, a system that I had worked under when I was a director of golf, and thought worked effectively, but came to realize it really doesn't. So after about 60 days at the club, I was asked to do a talk for the board about my observations of the club. And the thing that struck me the most is how independent each of the different departments ran. And in fact, they didn't just run independent, they actually competed with one another. They competed for dollars. They had very little regard for one another. The communication between the departments was very, very poor. And I would say it was having a really negative effect on the club as a whole. So stepping into that situation, it really was my first order of business, was to develop a method of trying to break through that and get the senior managers all pulling in the same direction.
If I'm not mistaken, as I look back, wasn't Essex Fells founded in the late 1800s?
That's right. This is our 125th anniversary year. Exciting time. We have a lot of things going on in celebration. Essex Fells is also the home of the term mulligan. So for those of you who have taken a second shot off the first hole, it started here during the Great Depression.
Would you say that the silo concept was already built into the culture? Do you think that it's the first time today in this decades of existing that there's one silo in place now because of you? Or do you think there was ever times during the process where it may have been one silo?
I think it's the way that they did many, and it may have been successful when the operation was smaller. I'd like to say it started with me, but I think the board and the officers recognized that we were working under a model that was outdated, and they purposely went out and recruited me to come here. Fortunately, it was through that they targeted me to come here. I now have a great senior management team. They all have a seat at the table. They're not just talking about the things in their own individual departments, but they're talking about the overall strategy of the club. My superintendent, we're in the beginning phases of doing a pretty significant renovation to our clubhouse, which is well over 100 years old. My superintendent is involved in that. My chef is involved in that. My membership coordinator is involved in that, because they all have, real keen insight and great backgrounds and knowledge that can be helpful to the process. But it also inspires them to buy into this concept that we're functioning as one team, and we really try to run it that way.
Yeah, I don't want you to answer the question yet of how, but I'm very curious, as a PGA member, what you've done is use the system to bring everybody together. Where did you learn that system? Where in your background did you craft, what it takes to create, a culture of a high performing one siloed team? How did that education come to you?
Really just over time, I was fortunate to get involved in the New Jersey PGA governance and saw it firsthand through that. And then when I became the District 2 director on the National PGA Board, to see the inner workings of how our corporate office down in Florida and now Frisco, Texas. And I got to be a part of this building of the strategic plan in 2014 that Pete Bavacqua had put together and put through. And I saw the way that process came about. And through all of that, understanding that, having a plan is critical. It's intrinsically valuable to get everybody involved in that plan, because if they don't contribute, they're going to have less buy-in. So I think I've just been really fortunate to be in these situations where I had the opportunity to learn from really smart people, a heck of a lot smarter than I am.
Isn't that something what you give, you get, right? So through this extra, you're working, you have a family, but you're committed to your association, you're investing time in your learning processes that you bring back to your facility. That's a very good story, Dan. Thank goodness for our association.
It's been so rewarding for me. I certainly have gotten way more out of it than I ever put in.
Well, quite frankly, you took a model from one culture that you were a volunteer in and have presented it, and it's been adopted in a culture where you're getting paid. It's a good story.
Thank you.
It's interesting, isn't it? Leslie, I want to ask you the same question. I want to just repeat it. Why do you think silos exist in our industry? And in quite every industry.
I think honestly, I think that there's a fear component, right? When maybe somebody or an organization isn't being successful and all of a sudden there's questions, you kind of retreat to what you know. And when you retreat to what you know, you tend to kind of put blinders on to everything that maybe you're not as comfortable with. And that was certainly, a situation that I had walked into with my previous club. There was an immense amount of volatility that had been going on. And when that happens, everybody kind of goes into self-preservation mode. And when you have self-preservation mode, you have a lot of people who are working very independently to make sure that they're not under the microscope in that moment. And I think that, not all, we've gone through this crazy couple of years of a lot of transition for a lot of people. And all of a sudden to, the food and beverage, discussion, there's a lot of people that there's a heightened sense of, oh my gosh, how am I going to survive this? And you lose focus on maybe what is going on the golf course. You're just kind of trying to protect what your department is, or, the salespeople have been inundated, whether it's been catering, whether it's been membership, whatever it's been. And all of a sudden they're not, if you don't have somebody who's making sure that communication is a pathway for both ways, all of a sudden you have a situation to where people are just very focused on their own lane rather than being mindful of the organization as a whole.
Well, you bring up an excellent point, Leslie, fear. And through a journey together at a property, I like to say as servers, we're surfers. We're riding these waves of problems daily, but we're also riding waves of culture when we have leadership turnover, which reminds us how important succession planning is, because when we lose a GM or we lose a department head, right away fear sets in because there's some volatility, as you explained, and there's not really a go-to, or maybe there's a natural go-to. And I think as leaders, we need to make sure that we have that succession plan in place to break down that barrier. That's an excellent response, Leslie. Scott, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Russell.
How are you?
I'm just living the dream.
You you really bring people together. You just have a natural way of doing that. When you're in a room, it's noticeable. And I wonder, some people have it intangibly, and some people have to work through it in the systems. How have you done it, Scott?
Well, I think it's really important to remember that we are in the people business, and it's not just our customers, but it's our staffs, our teams, our groups. And how do these silos get put together? At the last couple of clubs I've been at, I think, following Dan's point, it's part of the governance, but it's also it can be a power struggle, especially on the private side, right? So we've got quite a few I've seen over the time, members who want to get more involved. And I think it really takes leadership from the top in order to put together this common goal that says, this is what we're all here for. I'm willing to do the work, to lead, to bring these people together for a common goal. But I need, the path clear so that we can come together, right? And so a lot of times that's going to be changing the systems, because I do think it is like a self-preservation thing, or where people fall back into, this is just my department. Oh, I don't like golf. I don't like this. They don't help out. Food and beverage doesn't do this. And you just have to have a leader who can really say, here, we're all here for one goal. Everybody needs to get on the team. And the hardest thing in a private club, and I've been lucky enough to work on both sides, and it's a lot easier in maybe a for-profit entity where, you really can set out those goals clearly without all of the politics behind it. And that's kind of where I got the training of, hey, we got to put teams together, and maybe being a sports fan or watching some of these great teams perform, it's like you can watch the Patriots. They don't necessarily have the greatest talent all throughout, but boy, when they come together as a team, they really perform well. And so taking lessons from other industries, from other things we enjoy, kind of like Dan said in his time with the PGA of America, and how do I bring that to the club? And I think the success that I've been able to put together at the farms is really, some of that. What do we see in other industries? How is it working? And then constantly looking at it and saying, how can we evolve and change to even make it better and better? Because there's always great new ideas out there.
It seems like this is a question I'm going to ask the panel, and please respond as you see fit. We're all in the clubhouse together, and our golf professionals are with us, our food and beverage leadership is with us, our controllers with us, our HR is with us, sales are with us. But the one team that's not in the structure is the greens team and the golf course superintendent. What are some best practices that you've used to make sure that superintendent is being involved in the process of bringing the silos together?
So, Russell, I think you've got a great point, right? They're the only one really not in the building, and so we have to make an extra effort. We have to get involved. I think the first thing that's been very important is we have to understand what they do and what their role is at the club, and really be able to effectively manage it. And that's been one of the things I've seen with managers, is just maybe don't spend enough time to get to understand their role, what they're doing, how they do it, and just get immersed in their world. Like, I want to know everything about what it takes to be a superintendent and what their team does every day. I want to, get out there, and I'm riding on mowers, and I'm picking up plugs when we're aerifying greens. And, I want to be out there and let them see that, boy, I have just as much passion for what they do as we do in the golf industry, the golf operations, or what the team up in food and beverage is doing, and that we're out there for member events. But we're also out there when we're doing big maintenance projects. And it's that full thing. I think after a little while, they start to see that, boy, they really care. He's around, he's here, he's part of our team, he's down here, we're having lunch with us, we're organizing events with all of us together, whether it be, holiday events or golf tournaments, or just opportunities for their families to come out and enjoy the club, and we're all doing it together. And little things like when we'll have an event, I'll make sure that everybody sits at different tables. You're not allowed to sit with your more of your department, right? So we want to meet everybody and get to know them, and we talk a lot about it here. It's a family, and we want to make sure that we feel like everyone in the family is treated with respect and is cared about.
A good answer, Scott. Curtis, are you still with us? Can I ask you a quick question here?
Sure.
Just jump in with us real quick. As leaders here together, just share with us what the best GM you've worked with, or the best leader you've worked with, and how he's brought us all together in one silo. Because I think if we were to be talking to superintendents alone, this is probably a problem in our industry, isn't it? And why is that?
Well, I think I've maybe a little bit of an exception to the rule, because a few of the best general managers I've worked for have been able to bring me in to their world, where I understand what the job that they're doing, and have given me a lot of education, where several times I've had to step in to serve as interim general manager a few times. Mm-hmm. So I think the more managers we could bring in to walk in their shoes for a certain period of times and give them some insight on their daily operations, and just go through the motions of knowing, what they go through, is the best education I think we could do for them. But then it kind of gives them an understanding of what all of us battle. in that team environment with our manager meetings and acting as one unit and as a team. I mean, we all have each other's best interests in mind. But that education aspect I think is the most critical aspect.
I think you're right. That's an excellent point, because I think the budget for golf operations could be anywhere from 20 to 30% of total operating revenue. And when it comes time to make an adjustment in expenses, there's one place we're going. Unfortunately, because there's not much in F&B, there's not much in golf ops, and when we're spending $2 or $3 million out there, and without the big picture that you're describing, it can be perceived as they're taking from us, and us, us is a silo, if you will.
Oh,
Leslie,
being able to bring your superintendent into the financial meetings
yeah,
and have them understand the impacts of the expense side of the house, it's invaluable.
that's a game changer.
Game changer by 100%.
Leslie, you're in a new facility, and we're so proud of you. You have a superintendent that you speak highly of. How have you connected and brought? You mentioned that maybe there were some silos when you arrived, but through your leadership style of togetherness, I know you're making headway. Talk to us about that and how you've done it.
I think, and I'll use my former club is probably a better benchmark. I've been here for all of 18 days, so we're still in that beginning process. But here's what I would say, just in general, whether it's the super, the pro, food and beverage director, whomever it is, it really starts with a lot of questions and earning trust. And I think that's the biggest thing. I look at this as kind of an upside down pyramid, to where there's one of me, there's 10 of leaders, and there's 145 of our front of the house staff. But you have to it starts with that individual relationship. And that's going to look different with each person. So as it relates to the supers specifically, I've had more offsite time with the supers, because they have to, especially as a female, I think that there's a little bit of a challenge there about we may or may not know this, that, the other thing, but to gain that trust through first personal connection, and then showing the business acumen that you do understand what is going on out there, not on, not the level that Curtis, obviously you would know, but like on enough of a level to where you can have that connection. And it's the same thing on the golf ops or the food and beverage, or wherever you may not be the strongest in, or maybe it is where you are the strongest. I always say that the people that are the toughest position on my property is my sales team, because that's where my background is. So you can't BS me on that side of things, but it's gaining that initial relationship. And it takes, on my last property, it took 60, 90 days to not only make that personal connection, ask a lot of questions, but also then show that you do understand what's going on in their department, or at least that you want to understand. And then you have the tools to be able to, then their departments buy into them, and so by proxy, they buy into you. And all of a sudden you have a situation to where the person buys into you, and then the leadership team as a unit buys into you, and then the departments buy into you, and then the entire club buys into you. And I think it starts with that trust. It starts with a lot of questions. And again, as it relates to supers, I've spent a lot of time, those have been the ones that have been the off property connection and communication, just because hours are so different and all that kind of good stuff. But you got to figure out how you connect with each one of your leaders in every single one of your departments, on not only a professional perspective, but from a business or from a personal perspective as well.
Leslie, you bring up a really good point. Dysfunctional teams, or teams made up of multiple silos, have no trust. And really a functional team that's the first key. And how do you develop trust? You start with being vulnerable. And I know your leadership style. You'll be the first one to say to that superintendent, let's go for a drive. I want you to teach me something out here, because I don't know a lot, but I want to know how I can help you. That's a wonderful approach. Dan, I'm curious to follow up with you on the silo concept. I want to make a statement, and you tell me if you agree or see it differently. You're in a C7 model at Essex Bells, correct?
Yep.
Is it safe to say that they have one employee, the stakeholders?
Is it, I'm not sure I'm following the question. That, I mean, we
I'm going to ask it differently because I think it's a really interesting question. You work for a body of stakeholders.
Right.
And those stakeholders have committees that recommend, and they have boards that set policy. And in this business model, it's our job to execute policy. How many employees do you think that governance model should talk to?
You know, I mean, realistically, everything, you know, runs through me.
There you go.
However, I do make sure that my senior managers have that face time, so the board of trustees and the members view them as integral parts of the senior management team. So when the opportunity comes to present in front of the board, say our operating plans for the year, I always bring the other department heads along with me, not just as a show of force, well, really as a show of force to show that we're all unified in the plan that we've created. But if the board, if the members are going and they're trying to dive into the operations of the club, you know, that's a delicate position for me to be in, but it's my responsibility to stop it. And we really have worked hard through creating board policy manuals to show the organizational structure, yeah, through the organizational chart. They all answer directly to me. Our committees are only there for informational purposes and for the superintendent or the different department heads to use in the creation of their plans.
I think you've done a good job at answering that question. You really are the person, and I think when that's the best practice, we're all in one silo. But when we find either our owners or our corporate leaders or our board of directors are going individually to department heads to create some strategies and talk about some policy without going through us, now the silos, they're broken down. Scotty, how have you handled that in your C7 model when it comes to the flow of information from committees and board members through leadership?
Well, you're right, and Dan said it really well. Like, we have to make sure that there's a clear line of communication, that everybody knows where the information is coming from that they need to react to. And when people go around that, you know, every once in a while you'll be like, what's going on? He said, well, the Greens chairman came over here and told me that we need to do this. And when we look at each other and go, well, no, that's not how it works, right? So I think it's really important to have a great relationship. For me, it's a small group. It's a smaller committee than a lot of places I've been at, with your president, with the leader of that team, and they have to buy into your model and say, everything's going to flow this way. This is how the committee works. This is their purview and parameters, and everybody understands it. And if anybody gets out of line, I'm going to ask you as the president to go talk to that person, right? And say, hey, you can't go directly to the superintendent and just tell them you want to add a cut around the fairways for an intermediate cut. You know, there's a process for that. This needs to be followed. And when they start buying in, it's not that you're trying to clip their wings, but what we're trying to do is make sure that things happen in a plan. Because what every great team wants is to know where we're going, what the plan is, and have that plan be much longer than most plans are at clubs. We don't want to be reactionary, right? We want to look forward and say, I know what I've got to do this year as a superintendent. I've got my daily operations, I've got my small projects, I've got my big projects. I can plan, I can organize, they can get their group of people on their team together and working together. So it is a team effort. And just like we lead teams, of employees, I think it's really important that we lead and create a team on the governance side with our committees, with our boards. And if you happen to work at a non-member owned, it's really the same thing with maybe your corporate office or whoever else to say, hey, don't come in and talk to my sales team and just give them some crazy goals and tell them you got to sell everything at this price because we need to hit some numbers without really understanding the full goal and vision of the property.
Excellent, Scott. I want to summarize a couple of words for breaking down silos, and then I want to ask a couple of specific questions. It seems like if we arrive at a property, or we're at a property where we're segmented, it all starts with, I think, the trust aspect, the vulnerability aspect. Because from there, you can start the business modeling that Dan has spoken about. And in that business modeling, you will include your department leaders as well as stakeholders, whether it be corporate stakeholders or private ownership or board of directors. It seems like a simple process, but we're not facilitators, or we are facilitators. Leslie, how are you doing it, facilitating those kind of business planning sessions where when we walk out of the room that our vision and our commitment to that vision is owned by everyone?
I think on the so I think there's two answers here. I think that on the equity side or the member-owned side, one of the things that I created at one of my former clubs is the AGM was kind of a cross-committee structure. So I brought in the membership. We had a very active junior executive committee along with our membership committee, and I put one of our finance board members on my membership committee. So that way we were all speaking kind of the same language and being able to get kind of, what does this year look like? What kind of growth do we expect? Because when you're talking about silos, we're not only talking about the team, we're also talking about the members themselves. So times have we heard, oh, well, the juniors do this, or the social members do that, or the limit, whatever, different kind of membership categories you have. So being able to pull on the equity side, I think it's, critically important to kind of get the members kind of speaking the same language and on the same page too. So I would say that from an equity perspective. And from the corporate side or the for-profit model, again, it's really, we've said it a few times, is getting everybody to understand the numbers, getting everybody to understand the financials. And one of the things that I did at my past club is I changed all the bonus structures. Again, it was a for-profit model, but it could work in non-equity as well, or in equity as well. To where the bonus structures were interwoven with one another. So you have 100% bonus potential. 50% of that is in your department specifically, but 50% is relying upon the rest of the team. So all of a sudden, when people's bonuses or additional, funds are attached to the success of the team, you have a whole lot of people who are interested in the success of the team. And so that just kind of, it's a little thing, shifts the mindset, and that's worked really well. And we can talk about all the fun, team building things that we've done as well. But when you're talking about, you want to get somebody's attention very, very quickly, and you want to impose some locker room leadership, you can do it really quickly in those couple of ways.
I saw that best practice that you sent in, Leslie, and I thought that was really an interesting best practice. And I wonder have you experienced any unintended consequences from that practice?
I think initially it was a little bit of a gamble, because then you kind of get the finger pointing of, well, golf's not doing their job, or sales didn't hit their numbers, or whatever the case is. But what has happened was completely different than that. What happened was truly like, okay, golf, how can we support, membership? We know that you have some tours coming in. Will you give us a heads up about when they're coming in? We'll do whatever we can to, make sure that's a great experience for them, whether it's having, waters or beverages preloaded cart, or knowing their names, or whatever the case is. And very rarely do you see golf really take a vested interest in membership, maybe, or vice versa. So then all of a sudden you had the sales team helping the pro shop with some more innovative, Valentine's Day packages or merchandise sales. So it actually worked kind of, like I said, it's a gamble, but you got to figure out if it's going to work for your team. And I think starting with that trust, and then again, they buy into that vision, it worked out really well.
And that's a very interesting strategy. It brings me to one of Dan's comments that he sent in to me, that some staff members did not make it.
It's very true.
Dan, it's interesting. Talk to us about that.
Well, it's very true. You know, when I first got here to Essex Fells, you know, I had some of my senior managers had been here a very long time. They had worked under the previous system where they had functioned independently, and they were resistant to the new model. And as much as I tried to help get them on board, make them a part of the process, some chose not to get on board. And it's a very, very difficult decision. You go through all the steps. But I learned a long time ago that stress isn't caused by the people that you fired. It's caused by those you didn't but should have. And if you expect to have happy employees, you have to get rid of the ones that aren't happy. It sounds cruel, but that's what, you know, in my case, that's what it took to get a senior manager team that was all pulling in the same direction. And as a result of it, we're a much more cohesive unit now. The respect is a two-way street for my senior managers. Again, they sit at the table. They're invested in the overall strategy and the success of the club. And it is unfortunate when you have to make a change, but when you find somebody who does not want to be rehabilitated or can't be rehabilitated, it's time to make the decision.
And I'm just curious, we're getting near the end of our session here, but I'm just very curious. We know that the equation begins with trust and vulnerability. By the way, on this topic that we just brought up, of some staff members did not make it, it's fascinating as leaders how we can let our ego get in the way, meaning we think we can change the stripes on a zebra. But you know, the fact is we can't, and it's hard to let go that, hey, my leadership style is not, you know, I'm not good enough to change this person's stripes. I can polish them, but in the end, we can't kick the can down the road too far. But my question is after trust becomes modeling and being a facilitator of that modeling, from the time you present the modeling to the end, when you have a model documented, and then short period of time thereafter, you feel the collaboration, you feel we're all in one silo. This is a lot of fun. How long do you think that process took for you? What would be a good time frame that someone that's thinking about doing this could say, hey, here's where we are today. I have 5 silos. How long is it going to take me to get to where we're having fun together in one silo?
Look, I think it can change very, very quickly. But you know, in my case, it started with developing a strategic plan, defining what this long-term strategic vision of the club was, and then building out the operational plans that are supportive of that. And that took a lot of time. But the work along the way was very, very valuable. It not only helped me to understand the issues going on in other departments, it helped the other senior managers understand the challenges that were taking place. And it really did help bring us together as a team, the process of creating the plans. I would say it probably took us 6 months of research from the senior manager and manager level, polling the members, doing surveys, getting the board of trustees involved in the process, you know, recognizing their role in supporting the process. You know, what we spoke about before, which is, you know, having them stay out of the operations because it actually sets us back. And they have to buy into that as well. So it was probably a 6 to 9 month process, but now every single year we revise our operational plans. It becomes easier. The capital planning is a lot easier to deal with as a result of that as well, because we are all working together. We're willing to compromise to make certain that Essex Fells Country Club is as successful as it can be, and, you know, hopefully working its way toward peak performance.
It's an excellent answer, and there is a beginning, but really it never does end, does it? It's enjoy the process, and even once we have a document in place, tomorrow we're living this piece, and it just is going on, and then we're updating it. I think that's a good summary for us, Dan. And for those of us that are on the call that want to dig deeper into breaking down silos at the facility, I think there's been some good best practices talked about, and I think the process is actually very similar in a for-profit or privately owned or nonprofit model. It just may involve different people in the process is all. Leslie and Scott and Dan, any closing comments before we go on?
No, just Russell, appreciate you asking me to be a part of this. This is a really fantastic opportunity for all of us. I know that even just talking through here, I've learned so much as well. And just thank you for the opportunity. Of course, I'm happy to share my contact information if anybody has any questions or would like to reach out and have further discussions or discuss anything that we talked about or talk about fun team building ideas and all kinds of good stuff. So please feel free to reach out.
It was a pleasure, Leslie. Scott?
Again, Russell, thank you for this. It just gets me excited again to hear all these. Even being on the panel, I got some great new ideas today. And what I think is really important is with the last year and a half, what we've been through ending, I have found that this has been a great opportunity to even reevaluate again. And then, it's brought us closer. We've, found out a lot of stuff about each other and our operation. And I think it's another great opportunity to just reinvent ourselves for 2022.
Thank you for being with us, Scott. And Dan?
Well, I also really appreciate being asked. It's humbling to have the opportunity to share maybe a little bit about what I've learned over the years. And I do think this is a really important topic. It really is at the heart of what my core responsibility here at the club is. You should all be working toward breaking down these silos because it will have a negative effect and you never will achieve the level that you want if you don't work as a team.
It was an excellent session, panelists. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. I'm excited to move into our next panel, certification within the industry. Education and the value of certification. It's an interesting topic. I want to make sure that we're all present. I have Mr. Lamus with us, Michael Lamus. The titles after each of these three is quite good, by the way. We have Mr. Mike Lamus, a PGA Master Professional, Certified Club Manager, Certified Club Executive, and the Principal Owner at Lamus Consulting. He has a slogan that I see quite frequently called perfection is just a starting point. Kind of makes me think of another one of failing at the highest level. It's every day we're going to get better. Welcome, Mr. Lamus. Next, we have Mr. Ed Winicki, a PGA member, a certified club manager. Ed is a PGA career consultant who is certified in professional executive management, general management, ownership and leasing, golf operations, and retail and instruction. And also joining us, we have Mr. Brian Sullivan. Brian's a certified golf course superintendent. And for 33 years is what my research has told me, Brian. You're the agronomy leader at the Wilshire Country Club, located in the greater Los Angeles area. Would like to make a comment, and then Brian, I'm going to ask you a question, sir. First of all, what I found in common between the three of you as I read through your materials that you're all in love with learning. You just love to learn. Next question, Brian, I see that you have an individual on your team as an assistant superintendent named Ian. Is this your son?
No, Ian's now at Seattle Country Club, and he was not my son. I do have a couple of sons. One's in the industry. One's a fairly recent graduate of Michigan State, and he's at the Valley Club in Montecito. But no, Ian was not my son.
Got it. Well, I too have a couple of children, and I have a daughter in the industry, and it's sure a joy to share that in common. Welcome, Gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
Good morning.
I did some research that I found interesting. I'd like to share with you. And I don't really have a benchmark to compare, but I thought it was interesting. So the PGA of America has 25,000 members. 6.2% nationally are certified, and 4.4% in Southern California are certified. To me, that seems low. And I don't know what the goal is for the PGA when we set out the certification training. The Golf Course Superintendents Association has 18,000 members. 22% have achieved certification. That seems like a good number, 2 out of 10. I'd like to talk to Curtis further about that. The Club Managers Association of America has 6,800 members, and I've not been able to get a percentage, but let's assume it's somewhere between 6% and 20%. I guess I'd like to start by asking, gentlemen, and I'll start with you, Mr. Lamus, why do you think that is? And are those numbers surprising to you?
So Russell, I think the numbers, I think you have to see it in context. And again, I think Ed and Brian can help on this. First of all, as a PGA member, your barrier to entry is so much higher than it is for CMAA. And by that, I mean, to become a PGA professional, you have to go through a certification process to achieve that. So you're already certified as a PGA professional once you go through the process to become one. If you look at what CMAA does, and I can't speak for GCSA, but for CMAA, the barrier or the barrier to entry is not the same. You don't have to pass the playing ability test. You don't have to do a rules test. All you have to do is, when I say all, I'm not making light of that because it's a very strenuous process, but you have to go through an educational process, BMI 1, 2, 3, then write an exit exam or a comprehensive exam at the end of that to get certified. So I guess what I'm saying is a lot of our PGA members are already certified because they are by the value of the PGA certification, and probably that additional certification is extra work. Think of that as the MCM in CMAA or the CCE with CMAA. And I think if you looked at it from that perspective, you'd probably see that the numbers are fairly equitable. I don't know if I'm making sense to everyone, but that's how I see the difference. And certainly when I served on the education committee, on the employment committee, that was kind of the thinking behind that.
That's an excellent point. So if I become a PGA member, is that the end game? And Ed, I'll go to you, sir. Why would I think that's the end game when there's so much more education available? And how do you get people to fall in love with education? Why have you done it? You're now leading individuals as a career consultant, and what's holding some back from just continuing the process?
Well, Russell, thank you, and good morning. Michael and Brian, thanks for being here this morning, and it's a pleasure to be with you. You know, Russell, I think one of the things that's interesting when the PGA of America puts a high value on being a PGA professional, which is fantastic, as it should be. And when you become a Class A professional, PGA professional, one of the things that I think many professionals think that is where we were scheduled to be. That's where we've reached the pinnacle. I think our association continues to do great things to showcase how that's not the end game, as you said. That's just the beginning. And if you ask anybody who is certified in certain areas through the PGA, all the way up to master professional, they'll tell you that it has raised their value. It has been such a huge lift for their position, for their staff. For me personally, Russell, it's been something where I had great mentors along the way. And I think everybody on this webinar today would say the same thing too. Having someone push you and help you along in your career is so vital. Being self-motivated is a huge plus as well. But I would say to anybody that if you want to continue to raise your value and be the best you can be, you've always got to keep your foot on the gas pedal. And by doing that, it's continued education. It's lifelong learning. That never ends. So for me, surrounding my 15 years as a general manager, I put a huge emphasis on my staff's continued education. And I'll be honest with you, I did everything I could to make sure they had the opportunities to continue to learn, continue to get better at what they do, because when they're better, they make me look better. The club was better. It's great for the membership, and it's great for the entire staff. So as a PGA professional who has continued to learn and push the needle, again, I think you have to lead by example. If you want to continue to have your staff achieve greatness, it starts with you.
That's an excellent point, Ed, and great response. Let's say I'm a PGA member on the call today, and I'm an assistant or I'm a head professional, and I'm excited about an opportunity to grow, provide a better lifestyle for my family, further my career goals. I reach out to you, we have contact. Do you ask or do you look for a certification on their resume in that initial conversation? Do you sort of level them up, if you will?
Well, sure, Russell. I think that's always important. When I look at resumes and I look at what people have done in their background, you look at assistant professionals, it's important. And it starts with what's on paper. And being certified is a game changer. If you've got a stack of 100 resumes for head professional, director of golf, general manager position, it's easy to, on paper, that is, see clearly who is certified and what kind of educational background they have to put them in a separate pile. So later, if you get to that point and you have another all equal, if you will, that also is another separator. So sure, that matters for sure. And that's one of the things that I try to educate our professionals in PGA, not only to keep getting certified and keep raising their bar, but as Michael has said, if they can get involved in other associations. For me, I got involved in CMAA years ago. I also got involved in Golf Course Superintendents Association as a member years ago. Why? Because I wanted to learn more. And how can I help my staff or future professionals with their education if I'm not in that chair, if I haven't sat through hundreds of hours of golf course superintendents meetings, which have been invaluable in my career, along with the CMAA. So yes, that is a game changer and continues to be, especially with our industry, as competitive it's getting, with golf courses closing and with our it becoming the competition is tougher and tougher. The higher you climb the ladder, it makes a big difference.
You've said game changer twice, and if I'm on this call and I'm thinking about certification, I'm already convinced that I need to move forward with this education process. Brian, talk to us about the Golf Course Superintendents Association. 22%, 2 out of 10 have certification. That seems terrific. Why has the association done such a good job of encouraging certification?
Well, that leadership goes back probably 20, 25 years. There were some fairly progressive presidents and leaders at GCSAA, along with a fellow named Steve Mona, that some of you know, that was important, that superintendents are educated or perceived as being educated, and that there's a commitment to continuing education. Ed, you nailed so many of the subjects that I won't need to go over also, but we have a dynamic business. It's constantly changing. Here in California, we're already in a drought. We were in a drought a couple of years ago, and things there was some degree of relief, and we're right back at it again. And the price of water in Los Angeles went up 11% just this year, which was not forecasted. So everything from pesticide regulations to changes of chemicals to the management of the modern workforce. If you're not improving, if you're not educating, you're falling behind. We make a commitment not only with myself and the other leaders here in the club from an education standpoint, but we go out of our way to not only hire educated individuals, but those that we see that are, have a career path in the business. We've made a commitment to several of them, as I have my entire career, that we support their continuing education. And it lifts all boats. And it's good for morale. And, when the pesticide, the agricultural commissioner comes in, and instead of one person with a pesticide license, you have 6 or 8, it makes a difference.
It sure does. The last subject of breaking down the silos in a facility, that's a wonderful process of breaking down silos within a team. Congratulations, Brian. This next question I want to ask is, I really enjoyed asking each of you about your stories of certification. They're all very unique, and again, the commonality I continue to see is being in love with getting better. Mike, your story was very unique, and I'd like for you to take a few minutes to share the why of becoming such an educated leader in our industry.
Sure, Russell. I think it goes back to being an immigrant to the United States. So when I first moved here in 1979, one of the things that I struggled with was finding a job, getting employed. People just were not familiar with the university education I had had in South Africa. So the only way to change that was to go back to school here. Did a master's degree at East Carolina University. Did it at the tender age of 34 with 2 kids and mortgage and car payments and all the other good stuff. But that process put me onto a lifetime learning program. And once that got started, the penny, as it were, dropped for all of the other stuff. So, PGA certification, CCM, CMAA certification, all these different certifications, pennies fell into place, because once you get started and committed to learning, it goes back to the question you asked earlier of Ed. For those of you who've heard me speak on leadership, one of the things I talk about all the time are what are the arrows that you have in your quiver? What are the career arrows that you put in your quiver and are currently putting in your quiver each and every day? If you're not, when it comes to selection for that ideal position that you're looking for, if the other person has more career arrows in their quiver, they are probably going to beat you out of that position. So you have to constantly, to Brian's point, it's a evolution. It is something that you have to do constantly. If you're not changing for the better, you're going backwards. So what are those different arrows? And those arrows really start off with education, whether it's a degree, whether it's a certification, whether it's ongoing certification with the PGA, whether it's CCM, CCE, MCM, whatever it is. What are the things that differentiate you from all of the other candidates that are in a pool? And as Ed said, you can have 100+ people in a pool. And as search consultants, we got to get through that very quickly and get to a point where we have the best candidates in a defined pool. And so I appreciate you asking the question. I think it is a little different to most, But I think at the end of the day, the commitment, the ongoing commitment to education is critically important.
Very good. There's two answers there. One was the drive, and under most circumstances where the average individual would say they don't have time to go get their master's degree. And then second is once you start receiving the fruits of that time, it's like some of our tour players here. One just recently had a win, and once you win, that's all you want to do. You want that feeling back, and I think education is the same way. Please share the same why with us, Ed. What drove you on the certification process?
Well, Russell, early on in my career, coming up from the club side, the professional side, the golf side of the business, one of the things that I wanted to do out of college was try to play professionally. It didn't take long to find out that that wasn't going to happen. And yes, they are really good. And yes, it is the next level. And so realizing that I was not going to play for a living, my internal goal was to be the best professional I could be in our industry. So I've worked very hard to do that. And that can be defined in many different ways, as can success. But I will say that my motivating factor then has the same as it is now. When you look at someone like Michael, for example, who has worked very, very hard to get to where he is, achieve the success he has with the credentials he has, that doesn't happen by mistake. And so it is hard work. And you do, for me, it was getting support from my family, getting support from my staff, knowing that it did make a difference, and putting in the extra time, the extra hours, being passionate about it. Again, having good mentors, but also having the people surround you, whether it's at your place of employment or your family, that's very important. And that was also a very motivating factor for me too. So that whole process is not going to end for me. I still have many things that I want to achieve, and many more things that I want to add to my more career arrows, as Michael said. I have plenty more to go. I'm not going to stop. I also tell so many people that when you stop learning, you stop trying. And that may sound very direct, but I would say that, and that can be taken in many different ways as well. But learning comes in many different fashions. But the only thing that can continue to separate us and make you a better professional in our industry is certifications. So yes, getting support was a big part of it for me, Russell, and I still have that. My lovely wife of 25 years stands behind me in everything I do, and that to me is important. And knowing that if I'm going to go for a new educational background, a new career goal, a new educational goal, she's right behind me. So, and that's what I tell any up and coming professional, whether they want to become a superintendent, executive chef, food and beverage director, a general manager, an executive director of an association. All those are great, but again, it doesn't. You can only help yourself with the more education you have.
That's really interesting. Ed, when we listen to winners in sports, they always talk about the team, the people around them that made this happen. It's very rarely I, it's always we. And I appreciate that. It's the family, it's the facility, because we're taking away time from those responsibilities, and we're investing in that. We're going to make both better. Brian, I want to ask you the same question, but I want to ask a question first. Whose responsibility do you think it is to pay for certification? Where does the facility that we work for play into this? And ultimately, I know it's our responsibility. And personally, I've invested thousands of dollars into education. And I can't wait to spend more, because I too am in love with growing. But where do you see it, Brian? Whose responsibility is it to keep growing our leaders? And after that, please tell us your story of why you've become so educated.
I think by and large, I may be incorrect, but I think by and large, certainly from a certification standpoint for golf course superintendents, it's not that significant of a cost. And I think most of the operations or golf courses or whatever pay for it. But I think education and certification and all, there's a professional side of it that's a challenge, and there's a personal side of it. And I don't think in any of our associations the cost is so onerous that even if you were paying for it yourself, that it wouldn't outweigh the advantages. And the second part is, I grew up in the Chicago area and worked for, if you will, some of the better superintendents and golf professionals. And I didn't know which way my career was going to go, whether it was going to go golf or maintenance. And it was actually Arnold Palmer that got me on the maintenance side a couple of years later. But in Chicago, in the 70s, if you will, we kind of had educated guys that were taking over the positions of non-educated guys. And I had been 2 or 3 years as a superintendent, and I found myself with some of the pillars in the industry at a national conference. And a guy that grew up in the caddy yard with me, who's still in the business, his name's Bob Maybush. And Bob became one of America's first master greenkeepers with the British and International. And I remember kind of nudging him a little bit, because we'd competed anything from the basketball court to the caddy yard, you name it. And he was a couple of years ahead of me and doing fairly well on the west side of the city. And I asked him, well, what good was that? Are you looking for a trip over to Europe? And he said, of course I am. He said, but it didn't take long before the challenge was, you can't complain about something. You can't, underestimate something that you don't know anything about. So that actually became the challenge. And 6 months later, if you will, I was a certified golf course superintendent and found myself on the certification committee, which is, at the beginning you asked, what was the commitment? The commitment, I think, with all of our organizations has been 30 years or so to allow people to elevate themselves, whether that's personal or professional. But at any rate, so I find myself on the certification committee, and we were trying to figure out what the British and international guys were doing with the master greenkeeper, and basically competing to know which was, if you will, the more rigorous program. So somehow the committee volunteered me, and I took it as a challenge. It wasn't an easy challenge. Like Michael said about completing master's degrees while you have kids in diapers. Those challenges are personal, but I wouldn't take any of them back. And I find with my own son and with some of the younger guys that work for me now that 10 years or so ago, 15 years or so ago, I think GCSA certifications kind of gone from 20% to 18% and is on the way back up. I think that it is perceived as a benefit. And as Mike and Ed have said, if you get a pile of resumes and somebody has master's degrees and certifications and pesticide licenses, advisor's licenses, they're going to find themselves in the smaller stack on the desk of resumes. So I took certification as a personal challenge and have never looked back. And anyone that asks me about it, I encourage them to do it. And I think that, as I told you, one of my certifications, if you will, a club president found out that there were only a dozen or so Americans that had it. And he said, well, he didn't know it. And I overheard him talking to someone about it. He said, I didn't know he had it, but it doesn't surprise me. So sometimes in a roundabout way, even if it's a personal challenge, there's some credit out there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Brian, because I noted that you mentioned that story. But the last sentence caught my attention, and I appreciate your humbleness. But you put, I do not add letters to business cards or correspondence. And I'm assuming by letters, you're meaning some sort of certification, uppercase letters. Is that correct?
You know, I have a couple of very talented superintendents that work for me that, you know, that they have master's degrees or certification. And I mean, you almost have to fold out the business card for it. My point is, Michael, Ed, you know, people know who you are. Obviously, you take pride in your certifications, but I think it's as much of a personal challenge, and I think it's more important to be the example and for some of your staff to recognize that, you know, of course he's a certified club manager, certified professional, because that's what you demonstrate, that's what you act. So I think it's important to have the qualifications, but the qualifications develop you as the professional, not the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's neat. You're a very understated, gracious individual, and but I think, you know, having that shown that from an optics standpoint to your membership and others has some value to the certification process in general. I really appreciate that about you, though. Your style is very good, and I want to follow up by saying, you know, one of my favorite sayings is, how you do anything is how you do everything. And it goes from picking up that piece of paper that you walk by to the way you write, and on and on and on. And clearly, you gentlemen are high performers. And if I'm on the call listening and thinking about myself, I want to ask myself that question: how I do anything is how I do everything. Which leads me to, as habitual learners, and Michael, I'll start with you, sir. What areas outside of the industry do you enjoy studying and participating in?
Say, Russell, say that again. I lost the first part. Say that again.
What areas outside of the industry do you habitually enjoy studying and participating in?
So two of them, one is leadership and the other one is success. So those two subjects fascinate me because I think, you know, if you look back 20 years ago, there were very few books written about leadership, very few. If you look at that topic today, there are hundreds of thousands of books. Virtually every man and his dog has got a book on leadership. So I'm fascinated by leadership and the different types of leadership and how those different types of leadership can allow you to be successful, specifically in our industry. The second one is success, and that is everybody defines success differently. I believe we have 45 participants on this call, and each one of us would define success differently. It amazes me that some of the people you think in life shouldn't be successful because they have everything stacked against them end up being tremendously successful. And those individuals that you perceive to have everything going for them end up not being successful. What fascinates me is the why. And that's where today, Russell, I spend most of my reading. Most of my reading is audio reading done daily when I walk and exercise. and trying to understand the sort of world-class success, whether it's an Elon Musk, all the way through, Steve Jobs, whoever it is. What are the things that they did to allow them to be successful? They're all different kinds of leaders, but believe it or not, there are some very common traits that flow through successful people. So if we know what those traits are, we don't have to relearn them. We need to understand what they are and then adapt them for our lifestyle or for our careers to hopefully then be able to be successful in those. So leadership and success.
Two very inspiring topics. How about you, Ed?
Well, it's interesting. Learning never ends, and pursuing new things that I haven't done before never ends. I right now I get inspired by what makes people tick, and so learning how someone was able to get to be successful, whether it was in the airline industry or in the golf industry or the finance world, just how did they get to that point? And what's interesting is they all have unique hobbies, as I'm discovering. And, I continue to learn from both of my kids. One is my daughter just graduated from UC Santa Cruz, and my son is a junior at Cal Poly in SLO. And he told me a story the other day about wanting to do a lot of things he hadn't done before. And so he and a few of his friends are going to compete in a super marathon, to where it's 250 miles, and they sleep in a van. They take turns going through this, and it's just a rigorous activity. And those types of stories inspire me to do things that I haven't done before, and keep pushing my mental limits outside of what I do every day. Both, and that would help me physically as well too. So I look at things like, I've been fortunate enough to jump out of an airplane. I've gone parapenting. I've gone skydiving. I've done a lot of things, but, I don't know if I'll ever do a 250-mile marathon with tag team marathon, but I just look at stories like the Iditarod. That type of thing is so unique, and so I'm enamored by things like that. And what, not that I would do that either, but I look for certain things that are out of the box that inspire me to continue to do what I do every day. So I don't get stuck in a rut. So I don't find myself not satisfied every day. So, for me, continuing to look for things outside of the norm that bring me inspiration, those are the things that help me bring success, continued success for, as Michael said, that's different to everybody. But that's my success, is to continue to think outside the box and reinvent the wheel, recreate, and be innovative. It helps me be motivated every day.
As humans, we're born curious, but there are some that just follow up on curious and just want to keep asking and asking and asking. It's such a pleasure to listen to you, gentlemen. Brian, what is your unique hobby?
My hobby. I spend a good, and I was thinking about your skydiving. My father was a pilot in the Navy, and I asked him about skydiving. He said, son, never jump out of a perfectly good airplane. But my hobby is kind of the industry, if you will. I'm on a good number of committees, both environmental committees and supporting turf research, particularly at UC Riverside. And I find that I'm never ahead of the game. So for whatever reason, individuals have put me in the position to help these committees for quite a long time. I never feel like I've done my best. And then from a family standpoint, we, whenever we can, we get out on the ocean, and it's something our kids, the kids that are around, enjoy doing. And so the environment is kind of my hobby.
It's interesting, Brian, when Curtis was on earlier, which he did a terrific job. I don't know if you were on the call at that time. It was really educational and we enjoyed him very much. But he talked about 7% of the facilities in the state of California have implemented a 2019 BMP.
Yes.
And that's especially as I'm reading about the water issue, the Colorado River, Lake Meeting. You read it, it's dire. Why are only 7% of the facilities? Why do they have so few have this in place?
Well, number one, I think it was Blake Bentmeyer who was with USGA, and now he's with PGA Tour. I think he was a big part of that, and he was one of the right young guys that worked for me. So the where the USGA showed some pretty good leadership developing that, and the Superintendent's Association following up, it's still fairly new. And I think that 6% will be 36% and mandatory, probably within 5 years. So I think you'll see exponential growth in that. And I did hear Curtis, and he had some great comments.
Excited to learn more about that piece and bring that to our facility at Hacienda. I think it's critical, and I think first for sustainability, and second, it's great messaging to the membership that we're taking responsibility, because we know this summer we're going to be experiencing some water reductions, and we need to have the right message in place in advance.
That's right.
So if I'm here on the call and I'm listening to the three of you gentlemen who are wonderful people. Thank you for your contributions to the industry and bringing those of us along to inspire to get better. But just spend a couple minutes in closing talking about the closing argument on certification. I know that there's, as a certified professional myself, I know there's, and a lifetime learner, there's such a joy and a feeling, and I want to call it a rush in learning. I never thought of it as a game changer. It just seemed natural. I think as an athlete, being young, Leslie, who's on the call with us, is a 3-time All-American collegiate pitcher. And when you look at a person's success early as an athlete, that feeling just continues. Talk to us, Michael, about certification, and give us one last inspiration of how it can be a game changer in our life.
Oh, well, first of all, let me say this to everybody. Thanks, everybody, for being on this call. Ed, Brian, great being with you. Russell, thank you for coordinating all of this and leading us through this. I started off my career as a school teacher, so it's sort of the concept of learning and studying and wanting to achieve and wanting people to take on challenges and do better was deep in my DNA very early on. I think it's you mentioned Leslie earlier, and I think and I know Ed mentioned this as well about this ultra marathon that his son is doing. I think you have to look at certification as, if you looked at it as a sport, think of it as what needs to go in to achieve. So, I spend my life, doing triathlons. I was fortunate enough to do an Ironman triathlon. And I think about that, and people say, that was really a tough experience, or something tough to do. And yes, it was, but for a 6 foot, 200-pound man, that's not a typical build for a triathlete, right? I think everybody would agree. But then again, think of it this way: everybody can run, everybody can ride a bicycle, and everybody can swim. So the reason I tell you that is it's a commitment. Certification, education is a commitment. It is something just like Leslie's commitment to be an athlete, to be a softball pitcher, any of our commitments to be golfers, to do a marathon, to do a triathlon. It's a commitment. It's going to take you out of a place of comfort, and it's going to put you in a place that's uncomfortable. You have to learn how to be uncomfortable. But once you get through that uncomfortable feeling, whether it's in certification or in athletics, the reward for completing that, the personal reward for completing that is amazing. And, you know, I listened to Brian, and Brian, I think he's extremely humble, and I love the story. I think the certification, it's important, as Ed and I talked about, when you're going for a position, arrows in your quiver, it's important to help through the process for either a board or somebody doing hiring or somebody like a search consultant. But at the end of the day, the real reason for doing it is your own personal gratification and your own personal growth. When you finish a 5K, a 10K, a marathon, a triathlon, when you finish a round of golf and you shoot and you do extremely well and shoot a low score, that personal gratification that you get is exactly the same personal gratification you get when you pass a CCM exam or you pass, you know, out of university at a later stage in life. And I think it's that personal gratification, whether you choose to share that with others or not, that personal gratification, I believe, is what drives and stimulates people. And I think for me, that was the goal. The byproduct was they were great arrows in my quiver that allowed me to differentiate myself from others. But at the end of the day, I hate to say this, it was probably selfishly a personal satisfaction for me, knowing that I could do that, whether it's going back to grad school at the age of 35 with 2 kids, or whether it's running a marathon. I think it's that personal satisfaction, that gratification that you have.
Good, Michael. And if I'm on the call listening, I'm a member of one of the 3 associations here. I'm thinking about certification. Just remember the feeling that you had when you attained membership for the first time, the celebration that you had. Let's do it again. If you're thinking about certification, let's get that feeling back. And Ed, we'll close with you, sir.
Well, thanks, Russell. Again, it's a treat to be here with Michael and Brian. You know, 2 great leaders in our industry. I'll say 3 quick things because I know we're pressed for time. The other wonderful things that go along with being certified are the relationships that I've built over the years and all I've met through the Golf Course Superintendent Association, through the CMAA, through the PGA of America. I have so many friends that I can turn to tomorrow and ask a favor, and I'll have it in 2 seconds. It'll be email. You know, not to mention, as you said, the self-gratification, which is just unbelievable. 2, my staff over the years, my staffs have, if I wanted to get more of their trust and more of their faith and as their leader, I need to know more what they were doing and learn more about everything in their department that I didn't know to help their relationship. And lastly, you know, just as a self-gratifying thing, again, lifelong learning for those who are on the call never ends. It just makes you a better person professionally, personally. And I'll leave this with Curtis and Brian right now, that I've failed my QAL twice, and damn it, I'm going to get that test. I'm going to pass it. Am I going to use it with because I'm not at the club anymore? No, but I'm going to get it because I want to get it. That QAL, I'll call you for some help, guys. Thanks, Russell.
And I think I'm going to do that too, because I want to learn more about Brian's world. But Ed, you bring up an excellent point. One of the reasons why it's fun to serve on charity committees, for example, is you're with like-minded people. When you're in the certification process, you know, you're with like-minded people, and it's very inspiring to be together. Gentlemen, wonderful session. Thank you so much for your time. We'll now take a break. We'll come back at 10:05. It'll be about a 14-minute break, and we'll be joined by Mr. Mark King, Chief Executive Officer of Taco Bell. It will be a terrific 45 minutes together. We'll see you back at 10:05, everybody. Thank you. All right, it's 10:05, so I think we're going to get started. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good 15-minute break. This next session is going to be a real treat. We're honored, and again, I want to thank Tom and Nikki for bringing in such wonderful people. To be here with you, Mark, it's a real honor for us. Mark King, our Chief Executive Officer from Taco Bell. As I was mentioning earlier to all of us on the call, I was talking to Mark. He has a bio that is it's very neat and it's very educational. I want to take the time to read it just to give us some depth of who this individual is that has had such an influence in our industry. As Chief Executive Officer at Taco Bell Corp., Mark King is responsible for driving overall brand strategy and performance of the business in the United States and internationally. What a responsibility, Mark.
It's fun though, Russell. It's fun.
I know it's fun. That's because you're a fun guy. Drawing on his retail experience and track record of driving innovation, brand relevance, and culture, Mark accelerates the innovation, sales growth, and unique brand identity that makes Taco Bell a category of one. I'm so excited to get to the Q&A, Mark. It's such an interesting transition. I can't wait to ask. Before joining Taco Bell, Mark served as president of Adidas North America from 2014 to 2018. Under his leadership, Adidas market share doubled in under 3 years and sales tripled in 4 years. In addition, Mark cultivated new energy for the company's culture, resulting in the double number of employees at Adidas, an industry-shattering retention rate, the highest employee net promoter score. By the way, do you recall what that net promoter score was?
Yeah, it was about 65.
Oh, that's equal to Apple, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm at 53% right now at Hacienda on my member net promoter score, but I'm excited to introduce our employee net promoter score. You had more than 500,000 job applications in 1 year. Talk about a human resource department. Prior to Adidas, Mark spent 34 years at TaylorMade, quickly rising from a territory sales representative to president of the company in 1999 and CEO in 2002. During his tenure as president and CEO, TaylorMade became the leading and most profitable golf company in the world, catapulting the business from 300 million to more than 1.85 billion. Mark, I remember the day that Callaway hit $1 billion. They were the first company in the industry of golf to get the $1 billion mark. I'm excited to ask some questions about that.
Right.
Mark learned from his nearly 40-year career that creating the right atmosphere to unleash the potential of people to make extraordinary breakthroughs happen. As a leader, Mark steers with a belief system based in keeping a growth mindset, investing in others, and encouraging an innovative culture. In 2017, Footwear News honored Mark with the #1 spot on the Power 100 list, and in 2016, they named him Person of the Year. Also in 2017 and 16, Mark was named Executive of the Year by the Portland Business Journal. He served as the chairman of the National Golf Foundation and was consistently named as one of the 10 most powerful people in golf during his years at TaylorMade Adidas Golf. Mark currently serves on the board of directors for the V Foundation, which stands for Victory Over Cancer. Together with his daughters, he has raised more than 10 million for children's charities around the world through their One Kind Foundation. Mark graduated from the University of Wisconsin Green Bay with a bachelor's degree in business administration. Mark, two things come to mind as I'm thinking about your background, the last 4 years. First, whipping a club. Just putting the whipping on an old persimmon head in that transition from whipping a club to the metalwood, and I'll never forget the Bob May story. He was the last holdout with Davis Love III. He's playing, he has the wood head. Nobody's there to whip it at the club. Nobody knows how. He goes to his first metal head. The second thing that comes to my mind is the race between TaylorMade and Callaway. There's a quote that you have prominently displayed at markkinglive.com. I love getting up in the morning. I love living life. I'm high energy and I love to compete. I love people and I love watching them succeed. Tell us more about this quote, Mark.
Oh, wow. I guess that kind of captures almost all parts of my life. I guess I just had such a blast. First of all, Russell, thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be a part of the program. Anyway, the quote for me is, I've just really led a blessed life, it seems. I came from Green Bay, Wisconsin, small town. My dad was a high school teacher. I didn't really have any big aspirations as a kid, but I had a wonderful childhood playing sports and fell in love with golf, and then had this amazing life. And I guess I just learned, I don't know when along the way, Russell, that I think you have a choice every day when you get up. Do you choose to look at life through a positive lens, or all the challenges and difficulties of life? And I don't really know the balance of it, but 50-50 between how good life is and how tough it is probably pretty fair. But I've just always chosen to get up as early as I can and be as positive as I can and like as many people. And I just think that brings good things back to you. So I just really enjoy life, and the more I can share that with people, the better it makes me feel.
How interesting. So you chose just to bring people along with you. The drive to elevate people didn't come from anywhere other than just in the soul, and come along with me on this ride. It feels good.
Yeah, though I think, Russell, the one thing I learned about leadership, and I went to college. I don't know that I was a very good student in college, but I did go to college. But I think the one thing I learned is that most people, I don't know, but a lot of people struggle with how challenging life is. And I think they need something to get excited about and to believe in. And, we have religion, we have our leaders of the world, we have things that give us hope. But I also think that when you work in a company or an organization, or you're looking for the leaders to bring you hope and positivity and how things can work out for the better. And for me, that, I don't know why, Russell, but for me, that just came very naturally. And then I found that people that I worked with, they love that. They love following someone that was positive about the opportunities that life has more than the challenges that life brings. So I think as a leader, it's probably the most powerful thing is your attitude and how you look at the challenges that life brings.
That's a great gift and a great responsibility that a leader can bring, is to give everyone the feeling that they're a part of something bigger than themselves here. There's a big picture here that you're all participating in. That's not easy to do.
Russell, let me just take that a bit further. And whether you're working at a 9-hole public golf course or a high-end private facility or a big company, if people are working for you or your customers or your members, to your point, Russell, they want to belong to something that's bigger than what they have, what they think they have in life. And I think that's what attracts people to companies. It's what attracts people to specific golf courses. So I think as you look at your facility, find the good in it and celebrate that and market that, because that eventually is what will draw people to your facility or to you as a leader or you as a manager.
You're creating a fulfilling experience. I know a lot of people are wondering this next question I'm going to ask you, because it's the first thing that came to my mind when I read in the media about the change. What inspired you to transition from the golf industry to the food industry?
I'm not really sure, Russell, but I had such a wonderful 34 years at TaylorMade. Probably, one of maybe the most enjoyable part for me is when I was a sales rep from 1981 to 1986 or 7. That's when I met Tom Addis and many people on the call today, Jeff Johnson, and so many people that I met as a rep. I just loved golf professionals. I loved selling golf clubs. I loved the game of golf. And after 34 years, in the last like 12 years as the CEO, I thought it was time to do something different. And that's actually, Russell, when I went to work at Adidas in North America for 5 years. And then this opportunity, and then I stepped down from Adidas, and then this opportunity at Taco Bell came along. And my first reaction when I was recruited was like, well, I don't know about that. I don't know anything about the restaurant business. I don't know anything about food. But the more I talked to the company, and it's not as dissimilar as you would think. So first of all, it starts with employees and people that have to pay their bills and provide for their families. So it's really providing jobs for a lot of people, and that's the same, either industry. You have customers that are looking for your brand and your products to satisfy whatever part of that life is, whether it's an enjoyable round of golf or an affordable dinner or breakfast or lunch. So that's not so dissimilar. You have customers. Then you have products. I mean, whether it's a driver or a running shoe or a taco, you have to create new and exciting products, make them relevant to the customer. You have marketing, so you launch these products into the marketplace. So honestly, as I thought about it more, learned about it more, although it seems radically different, it's more similar than not. And I felt like, I could use my experience over the last 38 years of working in golf and in athletic footwear and apparel, that I could help the company move forward. So I decided to take the leap. It's now been 2 years, and I just thoroughly enjoy the people, the products, the industry. It's been really an amazing learning opportunity. And that's the other thing that I would end this question on, Russell, is I think when we're kids, to me anyway, the joy of being a kid was, I wanted to be a packer. I wanted to be a professional golfer. I wanted to be something. So you were always kind of excited and driven to do something. And I think as you go through life, it kind of gets stale and you do the same thing. You're in the same industry. And for me, changing industries at 60 years old made me kind of go back to school and learn all over again and meet new people and try to understand, a whole new way of life in this industry. So it's really given me kind of another lease on life and got me up in the morning full of energy, looking to learn.
I can imagine, and as I started to read, the similarities presented themselves, and you've mentioned half a dozen of them, but here's one that caught my attention was the technology. The fact that we're taking a grilled cheese burrito, we're melting the cheese on the outside of the burrito. And it was fun to read about Chef Rene. The challenge was how to get the cheese to toast, not melt onto the outside of the burrito. You found a magic paper that worked. And it was like, that's like an engineer in the manufacturing R&D in the golf industry. It's very intriguing.
No, Russell, you have done your homework, number one. So thank you for listening to that podcast. But that was one of the amazing things to me. Two things. One is, I come from two industries, golf and athletic footwear and apparel, where people are really passionate about their products. They just, they really get excited about a new ball or a new putter or a new driver or a new pair of running shoes. I had no idea how passionate consumers are about their food or about whatever product it is from Taco Bell or McDonald's or anywhere else. So passion for the product was really amazing. It was surprising to me. And then the other is how many food engineers we have and how much technology goes into creating these products, spices and flavors and texture. And it was really mind-blowing how much technology, I would say that, innovation goes into crafting what we take for granted. And it's just fascinating.
And by the way, my wife wanted me to mention you. We need to bring back the pizza. We're missing the
the Mexican pizza. No, tell your wife it's coming back later this year.
Okay. The other thing that caught my attention that must be really fun for you, and I see it. I understand you're a humble, inspiring leader, but you're also vulnerable. You know, I understand the fundamentals, but the swing within these fundamentals is brand new to me, and I can't wait to learn. But I know how to move it forward. The collaboration between the product development team, the quality assurance team, making sure that they were safe, the supply chain team, coast to coast, that we are quality and consistent, the engineering team, the technology and ease of operations at all the stores. Fascinating. So similar to the golf industry.
It is, Russell. And if you think, we have 7,500 restaurants in the US. And if you think about how many golf facilities, I don't know how many golf courses there are right now, but you know, at one point there were 15, 16,000, whatever it is. A lot of those are small ones, but there's about 7,500 golf facilities that sell golf products.
Right.
And you've got to create these products. You've got to have a supply chain. You got to get those through a distribution center out to the golf facilities. So it's really so almost identical. The average size store of a Taco Bell is about $2 million. And if you think about the revenue of the average golf facility, it's probably $2 to $3 million. So there's just so many similarities, and which has allowed me to kind of get up to speed a lot faster than if I was going into a different industry completely where they didn't make products, distribute to retail stores.
That's so cool. Let's talk about teams for a moment. I want to ask you the question of what is it that makes up a high-performing team? But before we dive into that, please share with us your first exposure to a team that you worked on or observed, and who led it, and when you knew it was different. It was different than other teams. It was a model that you wanted to use and grow forward with.
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. I guess my first, I'll answer it a little differently than maybe you're looking for, Russell, but I just love sports, and I played all the sports in high school. And I guess I was good enough to be on the team. I was on the football team, the basketball team, baseball team, and I played golf. Those were my sports. And I was just good enough to be on the teams, but I wasn't the best player. And I think what I found then was you could have a really good player, but unless you had a good supporting cast and a team that worked together, you weren't really going to win any games. And so I just think through observation, playing all these team sports in high school, I really saw the value of people working together with sharing one common goal, which was to win a game. Mm. And so I think my first kind of seeing how the power of team was playing sports in high school. Then I worked for a man. I was the VP of sales at TaylorMade. His name is Chuck Yash, and many people on the call probably know Chuck. He was the president of TaylorMade for many years, and then he went over to Callaway for a bunch of years and became the CEO after Mr. Callaway died. And he is, I would say, the one that really, from a kind of a academic standpoint, explained to me, and he was highly educated, went to the Naval Academy, Harvard Business School, really smart and really wonderful man. But he's the one that really emphasized, if you're going to be a part of a great company, it's got to be one team. And one team to me, Russell, is very simple. You have one vision. Where are you going? What are you trying to accomplish? And when everybody understands where you're going, what you're trying to accomplish, asked to be a part of that group to help accomplish that, it's only then that you can start to build togetherness and support for one another and alignment. So to me, he's the one that taught me about vision and alignment. And without that, you can't really have a team.
Would you package those fundamentals into the word culture?
Yeah, I think, yes, for sure. I don't know. Yes, I think culture has so many things, but culture to me, Russell, is just the behaviors of a certain group of people. So, and most of the behaviors are not written. They're just how the people that operate with one another or live with one another. It's the things that become acceptable and the things that become unacceptable, and that ends up being your culture. And so the role of the vision or alignment is, where are you trying to go? And so what are the behaviors that help bring that to life? So I would say that both of those are just one and the same.
Would you say that based on that definition of culture, that the behaviors of the team is tangible or intangible?
I think it's tangible because you can certainly see it. I think it's at some level it's unconscious behaviors. It's not people come together and they figure out how to survive. And then somebody comes along and they see it. They see the tangible behaviors, and then they start to document those. They start to talk about those. They start to teach those. And so when you find a mature company, now it's very tangible, it's teachable, and it's what makes you as a group of people who you are. So
it may be the most important.
It is the most important. It is. Strategies come and go, technologies come and evolve, but the way you behave, the way you interact, that's really going to define your success.
Have you had to address that in the Taco Bell world? Were you pleased with the culture, the behavior when you came on board?
Well, it's a really great question, and I believe that I wouldn't want to go to work in the morning if the group of people or the company wasn't trying to do something really extraordinary within the space that they operate. And so the first thing that really excited me about Taco Bell was they're really trying to be this category of one. You mentioned it in the opening, and do something beyond fast food or the QSR, quick service restaurant industry, trying to really stand out and change the industry. So that's part of the culture here, is trying to be extraordinary. Then the culture here is very much based on innovation and disruption, doing things unique, differently to change the trajectory of the company and the industry. That was really appealing to me. And then it's a very fun place to come to work every day. And so I was drawn to Taco Bell, not because of the business, but because of the culture that I saw during the interview process. Had it not been about fun, innovation, trying to do something really extraordinary, I wouldn't have come to this company. So it's the culture that attracted me to Taco Bell.
That's really cool. And that makes sense, because to go in and have to repair a culture would be especially an organization this size, would be a tremendous challenge. Maybe it's something at this point you wouldn't have wanted. I suspect not.
It's funny you say that, Russell, because when I left TaylorMade in 2014, Adidas was our parent company, and they asked me to go to Portland to run the business because the business was broken, the brand was hemorrhaging, and the culture was broken. And so my 5 years at Adidas North America up in Portland was about rebuilding a culture. And we rebuilt it based on a dream that we could become a great company, that we could compete with Nike and Under Armour, that we could do extraordinary things. And we would do that by having an environment that was inviting and open to everyone, based on new ideas and innovation, and having some fun. And so we built that culture, and today that business is still thriving, not because of the products, but because I think the culture that we were able to build during those 5 years.
And through succession planning, you have people in place that have kept it thriving. So if I'm on the call, I'm listening to us talk, and I'm thinking about my operation of 100, 200 people, and I'm an executive, and I maybe have 10, 15, 20 people on my team. It's one thing to talk about it in the boardroom, if you will, and develop this, let's call it the behavior. But you have thousands of employees in both of your companies. What best practices have you found that you've been able to communicate the purpose, the vision, the values, the behavior, and in our case, down into the next layer of leaders, and then down into the frontline leaders? How do we do that?
Well, that really is a great question, Russell. And at Taco Bell, we have 225,000 employees in the entire system. So we have a lot of people here. And even though a lot of those jobs pay, somewhere between $12 and $15 an hour, for those people, that is their livelihood. That's how they pay their bills. So I think the first thing is we need to really appreciate everyone that works. So like in the bag room at the club, I mean, those kids that work in the bag room, that's their job. So it's important that they know what's going on and what's expected and what are we trying to do. And it's pretty hard to inspire someone in the bag room with $10 an hour, but it is possible to inspire someone that they're part of an amazing club that's trying to do great things, both for the members and the community and the people that work there. So I think touching every employee in a meaningful way is really, really important. And so here's how I think you have to do it. So here at Taco Bell, we have a quarterly call where we invite all 225,000 people to dial into the call. Wow. And we talk about all kinds of things. What are the new products coming out? What's the new marketing coming out? What are some of the challenges we have at store operation levels? How are we hiring people? How are we training people? So it's very open dialogue. We have the chat. And now with Zoom and everybody's on Zoom, we have these calls all the time. So in some way, COVID has helped us discover that we can talk to our employee base a lot more frequently. So the one thing is I think you've got to talk to everyone, not every day, but I think at least hear from the senior leaders as often as possible.
That's a great best practice.
The next thing is, and right after this call, we have a director level meeting, which we have once a month here. It's down in the conference room, where we will talk about the challenges and the issues that we're faced with. So right now in our business, we're really faced with how do we hire people? Because with all of the stimulus out there, it's hard to get people to come to work for $14, $15 an hour. So that's a challenge at the restaurant level. That's just an example of not getting together to just tell people what we're going to do, but to offer up the challenges and then have a dialogue. So we'll have a meeting here with 40 people, the 10 executives and the 30 directors of the company, to talk about the big challenges we have right now, coming back to the office, rebuilding the culture, and have them help build those plans. So those plans aren't fully baked. We're asking for input. And what I found, Russell, is this: when you ask the organization to help solve your problems, one, you come up with a lot better ideas. You've engaged people in thinking, and you give them a platform to express their ideas. So you've built morale, you've built ideas. And then when you go to execute something, whatever that might be, you have a much better chance of good execution, because the general population was a bigger part of creating that strategy. So that's how we do it here. But the simple answer is this: you can't communicate enough.
Yeah, that's a great answer. What I heard you say is, with my 225,000 employees and with our cart teams and golf, turf teams and servers, make sure that they know they're part of something bigger. That's first. And how we do that is, this is a super idea, by the way, to have some sort of dial-in or Zoom, because it's difficult in our business to get everyone together, as we know. And then secondly, with the influencers, have them build the future and the ownership that takes place. And
Yeah.
I know that it's probably, I'm assuming that you're not involved, in hiring with the exception of the key executive. And I'm just curious, you're hiring really, at that point, you're hiring for behavior. Because by the time they get to you, the skill set's there. What are some of the questions you like to ask to really gain clarity of, what you can forecast this person's behavior to be like, and is it a fit for us?
Yeah. Russell, you're a great interviewer. That's because I'm not just saying this, these are really good questions. I would say this, that if you have a whatever formal hiring process you have, my guess is when you get down to the last 2, 3, 4 candidates, technically they have the right experience, they have the right know-how, they have the right ability to do the job. It then really becomes fit. And the one thing that I think people shy away from is telling people the good of your organization, and I won't use the word bad, but the challenging things of your organization. And to have a real dialogue around, let's just take Taco Bell, for example. You can hire someone to be on the marketing team here. And if this is a very fast moving company that likes to look at a lot of new creative ideas, likes to break kind of normal process because of innovation and the opportunity. That doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. That's the way Taco Bell does it. If you're hiring someone that's highly disciplined, process oriented, doesn't really like to change midstream, that's the discussion you need, is what environment are you best in? Are you really good in a controlled environment, or do you flourish in an open, creative environment? And be able to express to the candidate, if you're not comfortable in this environment, you're probably not going to make it here. And so I don't know if it's a question per se, as much as it's a dialogue, a real honest dialogue about what environment do you want to be a part of, Russell?
Right.
And get that out of them, because that people usually don't fail in a job because they're not qualified. They fail because they don't match the environment or the culture of the company. And that's really, at the final interview process, it's around cultural fit that will define success.
That's a beautiful answer. And I think sometimes we're asking candidates questions unknowingly, wanting to see if they're a fit or not. I was just listening to a Netflix podcast this morning, and they were talking about this very subject. It's a very fluid culture, and your structured way is not the right fit, not good or bad, by the way.
I mean, just in fun, Russell, many years ago, when I was working at TaylorMade, I mean, we used to ask people questions like, what's their favorite book? Or what's their favorite movie? Or, what's a perfect weekend for you? And then you could read into those answers. But I think time just says, just have an open discussion about it and talk about it. I think it's better to just discuss than it is to try to, decipher from an answer. Like, I like the movie Top Gun, like, ooh, that guy must be like living on the edge or something. So I think it's better to have the discussion.
Rather than be a detective, right?
Exactly.
There's the Taco Bell purpose, and there's a lot of talk in the business climate of your business's why, your business's purpose, and do you really live it, or is it just words on paper? And this caught my attention because, and I think this purpose may have been there before your arrival, but you correct me. But talk about coming to work as a young person and wanting to be part of something bigger. Start with us, stay with us. What a wonderful purpose. And then it leads into the Zavala story, the Zavala family. Talk us, is that real in the Taco Bell culture? Am I really gonna think that if I'm 20 years old and I'm working? Am I looking at that?
Well, again, you've done amazing homework to find this story, but it is, and let me tell you, so the couple you're referring to came into the United States from Mexico 35, 40 years ago, worked for a Taco Bell owner, a franchisee, and when the gentleman passed away, he actually gave the Taco Bell store to this couple who ended up getting married. And it's a beautiful story about coming to America as an immigrant, working your way up, and now actually being a store owner. And these restaurants do about $2 million a year and are highly profitable. So they have a beautiful life now in many years that they put into it. And here's why the start with us, stay with us is so relevant in our industry. Because most young people aren't going to get excited about working at a Taco Bell. Most young people do it. It's a starting job. It's part-time. It's flexible hours. They don't need an education to do it. And most of them don't think about it as a career. And so this start with us, stay with us. And that's why we had, one of the first podcasts I did here was with the couple, was to say, look, there is a path here that you can come in as a part-time employee. We will help train you. You can start out as a team member. You can become a shift lead. You can become a restaurant general manager. You can be above restaurant manager all the way to owner. So we really pave the path for a career. Now, when you get to be a restaurant general manager, you're making close to $100,000 a year with salary and bonus. So that's a pretty amazing job for someone that doesn't have to have a college education. So we're really committed to building a career for someone at Taco Bell, just not a job, because otherwise it's very hard. There's so much turnover at that entry level. And if we provide them an opportunity to have a real life here and a career, it really helps retain talented people.
That's really inspiring. And I would be curious to know, out of 10 stores, how many are general managers that actually have followed that cycle? And I'm not asking you to answer unless you know roughly.
Honestly, Russell, almost every one of them. That's
really?
Almost everyone started out as a team member, did a good job, got promoted to shift lead, did a good job, and became the general manager. So if we have 7,500 general managers, I'll bet you 95% had that path, every one of them.
Our purpose, stay with us, start with us, stay with us is real. Yep. And the general managers are the best one to communicate that story. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, Mark. This is an interesting question to me. So we're here on the call, and we're a mid-level leader here listening. And we're very excited about what we've heard earlier in the call on how to break down silos at the facility, the importance of certification. And now we're talking about what a high-performing, good culture looks like and the behaviors. But in my facility, I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing a dysfunctional team. What would you recommend they do? How would you recommend they approach this subject with who they report to? Perhaps their department head or their general manager.
Well, I think the first thing is that as a leader, you cannot avoid the problem. I think you have to go seek out, if it's dysfunctional, why is it dysfunctional? And I think you have to figure out why that is. It could be process. It could be a person in there that causes all kinds of anxiety. It could be one of 100 reasons why the dysfunction. And then, to me, you would find solutions by engaging people who told you what the dysfunction was. Well, how would you solve that dysfunction? Which again, then when you implement that plan, it's certainly a lot easier to get buy-in because they've helped build the plan. And then I would take that to whoever I reported to and say, look, we're dysfunctional. Here's why we're dysfunctional. And here's the solution to address that. That's what I would do.
That would take a very unique individual at the mid-level to have the confidence and the vision to bring that forward to their report. And for those of us that are on the call that are in that position, listen closely to that and reach out to a leader or a mentor and ask, what are some steps I can take? Because let's say that you love your operation, you love your facility, but you want to improve the team, you care enough about it. Like Mark just said, don't do nothing, do something, and you'll be better for it.
Yeah.
And on that topic, what are some of the biggest culture killers? Pick one, two, or three that really are what you would call pet peeves to you that you would address right away.
For me, a culture killer is when organizations have to react to pet peeves of the boss. I think in today's world, I think you leave your pet peeves as a boss to your home life. And if you whatever they might be, leave those at home and create an environment that allows everybody to help create that, not just what your job as the leader is to create an environment that produces great results. That's what it's about. It's not about your vision. It's not about what you used to do 20 years ago or how tough it was when you had Tom Addis as a boss at Singing Hills. It's not about that. It's about, I hope you're smiling, Tom. It's about, we need to produce results, and results are member satisfaction, revenue, profit, whatever you get evaluated on. So what are the best strategies to do that? And don't let somebody up here, either the executive team or the general manager, the one or two things that are really important to him, and maybe they're not consistent with what the culture needs. That's a culture killer to me.
That sure is. We can bottleneck our future, can't we?
I mean, I'll give you a really good example, Russell. I'm 62 years old and I love coming to the office. I see great value in coming to the office. And right now we're deciding we're coming back to the office. And if it were just up to me, I would say we're all coming back to the office. And I want you here on Monday, and I want to go home on Friday at noon. And that's what I would like. But that's really not what everybody wants, because some people, they want flexibility, or they want to work from home, or they would learn that this works. So I have said, great, let's do what is the best for the environment, for people to create the best environment for the best results. And if I came in and said, look, and I have the power to do it, but that's a culture killer for me.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That's beautiful. We're getting near the end here, and we're fortunate that you're letting us into your behavior style. And I want to just dig a little deeper into it, because you're a special leader, and there's something for us to learn a little bit more about your behavior. So I want to have a little fun with you here in the end. All right, we're going to go through some rapid fire questions, if you will.
All right.
Are you a morning person or a night person?
Morning.
Start off the morning with exercise each day, do you?
Pretty much. I did my 10-minute yoga today because I had to be in the office by 6, but I got my 10-minute yoga in.
Got it. One word to describe yourself.
Geez, that's a complicated question, but I would say focus.
Yeah, I can see that. What's your favorite book?
Good to Great by Jim Collins.
It's a wonderful book. A lot. It's not a one-time read either, is it?
No, and you can read it over and over again and get something new out of it every time.
I know. Where's your favorite travel destination?
I was there last week, Pebble Beach.
Oh, that's cool. And it's close by too.
Yeah.
What is something you can't live without?
Well, now it's become wine. So no, I'm just kidding. I don't think I could live without a challenge. I need a challenge.
Yeah. How interesting. How long do you think you're going to be in this role at Taco Bell?
Well, I signed up for 3 years, and my third year is up about a year from right now. But it's so energizing to me. As long as it's going well and I feel like I'm making the company better, I think I'll stick with it.
Yeah, it feels like it's just the beginning still, doesn't it?
I think so, Russell. Yeah.
Who's the person that's made the biggest impact on your career? You mentioned a gentleman earlier that went to Callaway, Mr. Yash. Who else?
Well, it's simple. I would say two people. One is Chuck, and then the other I worked for at Adidas for 16 years. His name is Herbert Heiner, a German guy that was the chairman and CEO of the Adidas Group for many years. I worked for him for 16 years. But he taught me the power of big goals, and the higher you set that bench, or the what you're going for, that we're all capable of a lot more than we know. And so he taught me that if you push yourself, you can do more than you think you can.
And are those goals, do they seem attainable sometimes when you set them that high, or is it best to almost make them unattainable, if you will, because you don't know where the cap is?
I think it's unattainable, but that's why for me, maybe the word's not a goal, but it's a dream. And which creates a journey, and it's a path forward. And I don't think it's a goal, because a goal you can actually get or you can't get. And to me, the dream or the aspiration is a lifelong journey about getting better or moving forward every day. And that's, to me, what makes life exciting.
Yeah, I understand. That feels good. What's the best career advice that you've ever received? And that may be it.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, and because I get asked this question a lot, and I would answer it this way: find something you're really good at and then do that. Because I think a lot of people are frustrated with their careers because they chase a dream of something that they're no good at. Like, I tried track and field one year, and I was the slowest guy on the field. So I said, okay, I'm not going to be a track star, so I'm going to do something else. So I just think we all have gifts. We really do. And I think self-analysis and being honest with yourself, what are you really good at? Because there's nothing more rewarding than when you do something and you do it well. And you don't have to do it well for the other people. You have to do it well for yourself. And I think when you achieve success, you feel better about yourself. So find something you're good at and then do it to the best of your ability.
That's great advice. And the last question is, you're a game changer. You've impacted, quite frankly, the world's a better place because of you. Who's another game changer or two that you admire and would want to play 9 holes of golf with today?
Oh my God, that's an interesting question. I guess I would have to say Steve Jobs. And I don't know him, obviously, and he's passed away, but if you think about, he had this dream, and he was a scrappy entrepreneur trying to get it off the ground. He never compromised his beliefs or his passion, and he believed that he could do something, and he changed the world. So
he sure did. And the last book that he wrote to the end was a wonderful read. By the way, everyone that's with us today, please check out markkinglive.com to learn more about Mark. It's really an inspiring website you've developed. And I mentioned this earlier, but what we have in common is our go-to is a bean burrito with green sauce and sour cream. So thank you for that. We're going to move into a Q&A now, and perhaps I can get some help from the staff. I'll open up the chat box here. And Mark, this has been really, really fun.
Well, thank you, Russell. It's been, you're amazing. Thank you. Really, really great.
Well, I'm sure there's some questions out there for us. We have 6-7 minutes left, and we'll let you go on time. And the chat box is open. If you'd like to send a question in there, I have it present. I can see it, and I'd be happy to read it to Mark.
Somebody's typing.
By the way, while they're typing, I'll circle back to the labor issue. You know, we're hiring. I'm hiring people that can't draft a beer.
Yeah.
But they're wonderful, fresh souls, ripe to, you know the bigger picture and ripe to understand the service industry. And it's a lot of fun right now. We have a question that's come in that says, who's your all-star of your life?
Oh my God. Well, I gotta go. Honestly, I gotta go co-all-stars because I have two amazing daughters. One is 30 and one is 26. And they're just two amazing people, two girls. And spent yesterday with them, with their husbands, and they would be my all-stars.
Oh, that's how you spent Father's Day yesterday with the daughters and their husbands?
Yep, and this is for Tom Addis. We didn't play golf, but we went to the range to hit some balls. So even on a day I didn't play golf, I still hit some balls.
That's cool. Do you have grandchildren?
No, one. They both just got married, so it's brand new.
That's a great day for you, sir. A question's come in about playing a lot of golf. You know, many managers and pros don't play a lot because of member perception. I don't know what that means. Does that mean at their own facility or not? How do you play so often, and how is it how is it viewed from your team?
Well, the first thing is my kids are gone, so I have no one at home except me and my wife. I never really played much golf until COVID hit, and now I don't travel, and now I'm starting to travel again, so I'm sure my golf will go the other way. But I only have one passion outside of work and family, and that's golf. And I go out on Friday afternoons and play. I play Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings, and I mean that's when I play. I don't really play during the week.
Yeah.
But that's what I do, and I just find time. My buddies and I play on Saturday and Sunday mornings. We tee off at 7 and we're done at 10, and I got the rest of the day. So I just, you know, I get the member perception, but I also think that we work so hard at our jobs. And the one thing that I really believe is that I've been able to have high stress jobs now. I mean, I've been a CEO for 22 years, and I don't feel a lot of stress. I'm sure I carry it inside, but I don't feel a lot of stress because I sleep a lot, I drink a lot of water, and I have my time for me, and my time is playing golf. It's not traveling, it's not, you know, going to parties, it's golfing. And I think it really gives me a peace of mind and time away. And I think it's important for my mental health. So find what that is for you and do that, because I think it's really important.
Are you an 8-hour sleeper?
Yeah, I would say more like 9, Russell.
Got it.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, there's one more question here, and I think it's an interesting question. You were talking earlier about creating new products and the difference between golf and the food industry. How do we create new products since the golf course doesn't really change? Interesting question.
Yeah, here's what I would say that happened to golf equipment when I was at TaylorMade. I think in some ways, first it was a first. I mean, for many, many years, up until 80, golf equipment really didn't change much. It was the same forged irons, woods, 8802 putters, and then Karsten Solheim came along and really turned it into a technology industry. And then TaylorMade followed, and then Callaway followed, and it really became an arms race for performance and technology. And honestly, I would say 10 years ago, it became a fashion business. When TaylorMade launched the white driver, and we sold so many white drivers, and now I think the advancement in performance is very incremental, but the golf club looks beautiful. The head cover, the integrated club, Scotty Cameron putting stuff on the bottom. I mean, it's a fashion business right now. So yes, it's technology, but it's because of the regulations by the USGA, which I fully support, by the way, I always have. It's about making golf clubs attractive, because golfers, passionate golfers like myself, I want to buy a new driver every year. I don't care if it works any better. I just want somebody to tell me it's going to work better, and then I'm going to buy it. So I think golf clubs today are almost as much fashion as they are performance.
How very interesting. Well, Mark, I wish you a great session with your executives today. Some strategies to bring the workforce back. Pleasure that we all got to spend this time with you. We're grateful, and we wish you and your family the best.
Thanks, Russell, and thanks everyone for tuning in. It's just love you guys, so thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, see you guys.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, Tom, are you still there? And Nikki?
Yes, sir.
Still here.
To wrap it up, Russell?
I think so. I want to just say to you, thank you for the honor. I enjoyed preparing for this, and I enjoyed learning, and the participants that you brought on board were terrific. You led us beautifully on this. So to Tom, to Nikki, the Education Committee, thank you for the honor, and we look forward to more time together. And everyone that joined us on the call today, thank you very much.
Great job, Russell. That was pretty awesome.
Thank you, Robin. I'll go ahead and leave the call now, Nikki.
We can close it out.
Okay.
Thank you very much. As a reminder, this will be recorded and posted on the SCPGA YouTube channel, probably later today or tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, and thank you, Russell, for hosting.
Thank you, Nikki. Bye-bye, everybody.